Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to ULT San Diego for the Aquarian series. This evening, the title of the presentation is The Dodecahedron, which will be given to us by Mr. Kirk Gradine, and our chairperson this afternoon is Desiree Van Sanen. Before we get started, I'd like to do a reading. Okay, this is from The Voice of the Silence. Know, conqueror of sins, once that a Sowani hath crossed the seventh path, all nature thrills with joyous awe and feels subdued. The silver star now twinkles out the news to the night blossoms. The streamlet to the pebbles ripples out the tale. Dark ocean waves will roar it to the rocks surf-bound, scent-laden breezes. Sing it to the vales and stately pines, mysteriously whisper. A master has arisen, a master of the day. He standeth now like a white pillar to the west, upon whose face the rising sun of thought eternal poureth forth its first most glorious waves. His mind, like a becalmed and boundless ocean, spreadeth out in shoreless space. He holdeth life and death in his strong hand. Yea, he is mighty, the living power made free in him, that power which is himself, can raise the tabernacle of illusion high above the gods, above great Brahm and Indra. Now he shall surely reach his great reward. Shall he not use the gifts which it confers for his own rest and bliss, his well-earned weal and glory? He, the subduer of the great delusion? Nay, O thou candidate for nature's hidden lore, if one would follow in the steps of holy Tathagata, those gifts and powers are not for self. Wouldst thou thus dam the waters born on Sumeru? Shalt thou divert the stream for thine own sake, or send it back to its prime source along the crests of cycles? If thou wouldst have that stream of hard-earned knowledge, of wisdom heaven-born, remain sweet running waters, thou shouldst not leave it to become a stagnant pond. No, if of Amitabha, the boundless age, thou wouldst become co-worker, then must thou shed the light acquired, like to the bodhisattvas twain, upon the span of all three worlds. Know that the stream of superhuman knowledge and the deva wisdom thou hast won must from thyself the channel of alaya be poured forth into another bed. Know, O Narjal, thou of the secret path, its pure fresh waters must be used to sweeter make the ocean's bitter waves, that mighty sea of sorrow formed of the tears of men. We give to you our very own Kirk Grady.
Thank you, Monica, for that very fine reading. Greetings, everyone, and thanks to San Diego ULT and Jonathan and all the folks there for making this Aquarian series possible and inviting me to give this talk. I noticed the other day that we're 12 days after November 17th and 3 times 12 days before January 4th. So starting out with a little numerology that seems auspicious. And this quote from, actually it's from Hermes, but written by Helen Valborg. The dodecahedron perfectly combines the wholeness and oneness of the sphere with the great sacrificial presence of the triads in the quaternary. This quote And this article titled The Dodecahedron was first published in Hermes magazine in August of 1985. And it can now be found on theosophytrust.org. And we would refer everyone to it, as well as to several other resources for anyone who's interested in probing into this topic. The SD, of course, Volume 1, Cosmogenesis, has many references to the whole theme of sacred geometry and the metaphysical correlations that are so compelling and illuminating, as well as her transactions of the Blavatsky Lodge, which, as most people know, is her verbal responses to students who had questions on the stanzas. And then there's other articles by her as well, like the five-pointed and the six-pointed star, which is also mentions the dodecahedron, and then Sri Raghavan's 3 volumes, the Gupta Vidya. But in particular, we discovered this one article which deals very directly with sacred geometry and this kind of unfolding as it applies both to the capacity for visualization and the breakthroughs that it has created in modern science, but also as it applies to the spiritual path, whether one is a beginner or advanced. And then the 2 articles by Helen, actually, both the dodecahedron and the triangle, will provide a far deeper and better doorway into the esoteric significance and the symbolism that than what you will hear today. The full quotation from Helen's article reads as follows of this particular sentence: "The dodecahedron combines so perfectly the wholeness and oneness of the sphere, which is its constant reference point, with the great sacrificial presence of the triads in the quaternary, represented in each of its pentagonal faces, that its form could easily become the focus of one's deepest reverence and gratitude." And this quote in its entirety really points to several keys to understanding the Pythagorean conception of sacred geometry that we would argue is being revived through the Theosophical movement. Through the writings of H.P. Blavatsky, Raghavan Iyer, and Helen Valborg, we now have explanations never before made available to humanity in the English language. That is, that the mathematics of the soul and of spirituality, as brought from India by Pythagoras in the 5th century of the Common Era, actually before the Common Era, 5th century BCE, which links the fundamental principles of geometric unfoldment from the point, the circle, and the line to the 5 Platonic solids, as given by Euclid, with the esoteric teachings of the mystery schools of the ancient world, and with the triad of metaphysics, ethics, and metapsychology. Sacred geometry and number is the foundation of what HPB calls in the SD the mystery language. It is the basis of theosophical symbolism, once known, she says, to the truly wise of every nation. And by means of this language, she wrote, the esoteric knowledge called Theosophia, Brahmavak, or Gupta Vidya, that of a continuous line of seers and adepts, was passed from one generation of initiates to the next over countless ages. And when fully assimilated, it is also that language of the soul, wrote Robert Crosby, by which any being of any type or grade may be understood, communicated with, and uplifted. Pythagorean geometry, as found explained in the Secret Doctrine, in Hermes and the Gupta Vidya, is repeatedly shown to be the most eloquent expression of the mystic philosophy concerning cosmogenesis and anthropogenesis. It provides us with a supremely potent and graceful archetypal language by which to begin approaching and meditating upon the doctrine of emanation, of cosmic breath and differentiation, of the periodic emergence of the many from the one and its return thereto. At their culminating essence, the metaphysical principles and hierarchies represented by the Dodecahedron, as well as all of the elements, actually, of Pythagorean geometry, are linked not only with the zodiac and the nidanas, but with the avatars, bodhisattvas and nirmanakayas, who both oversee and guide evolution while repeatedly, self-consciously, and sacrificially incarnating at key cyclic junctures in order to assist, aid, and inspire all of sentient life. And without assimilating this teaching, we're told, the mystery of life, of true creativity, of the correspondence between the microcosm and the macrocosm, and the true nature of the self will not be understood, wrote HPB, nor even closely approached. And as the life of Pythagoras, as given by Iamblichus and the Golden Verses themselves repeatedly remind us that access to this wisdom cannot be gained except under the strict demands, vows, and challenges of the spiritual path of discipleship. And this is one of the things that is suggested by Helen's quote, that as we learn in regards to the school of Pythagoras, that no one could apply for admittance to the school without having studied the quadrivium, considered the four divisions of mathematics. But the moral qualifications were far more demanding, for this was not merely a logical and intellectual endeavor, but one of alchemical self-transformation. No aspect of one's life was exempt from uncompromising and exacting moral analysis. At every stage, the study required the unremitting love and service of others, of nonviolence, discipline, and devotion, the activation of the metaphysical and moral imagination, and a canceling of the concerns and obsessions of personal egotism. Moreover, a deep and abiding current of gratitude and reverence for the Guru Parampara chain, for celestial realities and true terrestrial teachers, especially those who had made the beginning outlines of this esoteric system available, was an absolute precondition. Again, we find this in the Golden Verses, in the commentary by Hierocles, where he states that Pythagoras was said to have awakened the Tetractys in the hearts of his truest students. Less than 160 years after Pythagoras, Euclid, who is considered the father of geometry, codified 13 books on the system and released what Sir Thomas Heath called the greatest mathematical textbook of all time. Euclid's Elements is the oldest large-scale treatment of mathematics available to us and has been reprinted in more languages, nations, and editions than even the Bible. It covers the theorems and proofs of plane and solid geometry, of elementary number theory, incommensurability, what is commonly called the Pythagorean theorem, common divisors, and the construction of regular polygons and polyhedra. Though it cannot be proved by extant documents, Heath, Thomas Taylor, and other insightful scholars of ancient Greek mathematics suggest that much, if not everything given in Euclid, was known and studied by the Pythagoreans. But because of its potency, during the time Pythagoras taught, the system could not be revealed except through initiation. Plato was born roughly 70 years after Pythagoras and is still considered his greatest pupil. No doubt everyone is familiar with the famous quote which Plutarch ascribes to Plato, that God geometrizes. In the Republic, Socrates also adds that the knowledge at which geometry aims is knowledge of the eternal. When rightly approached, he taught, geometry provides a proper foundation for all true education and philosophy, quote, the turning around of the soul from darkness to light, from mere objects and opinions to essences and realities, unquote. And ultimately to the contemplation of the divine Son, the agathon, the good in and of itself. The Platonic dialogue known as the Timaeus is thought by scholars to have animated much of ancient Greek, medieval, and Renaissance architecture and esotericism. And in it, the Pythagorean philosopher, statesman, mathematician Timaeus of Locri briefly describes the geometric and numeric manner by which the deity unfolds or differentiates the metaphysical patterns of the cosmic elements from a boundless rotating sphere to the 12-faced dodecahedron. While an infinite number of polygons, that is, two-dimensional space-enclosing shape formed of equal lines and equal angles is possible, in 3 dimensions, only 5 polyhedra are possible. A polyhedra is a 3-dimensional space-enclosing shape in which all of the line segments are equal. Each plane formed by the lines is equal to all the others in that shape, and all the angles at which the planes meet are all equal. And this also means that all of the angles or vertices at which the lines meet in a polyhedra would touch an enclosing sphere and would be equidistant from the center of that sphere. At a beginning level, we can see that while there is differentiation and multiplicity, that each of the polyhedra being different than the others, that still the principles of equality, justice, symmetry, balance, and uniformity are being universally maintained. And there are many other fascinating aspects of the geometry of the 5 solids. For example, as shown in the lower diagram here, the hexahedron, or cube, is the inverse of the octahedron. That is, if you take the center point of each face of the cube and connect it with lines to the center point of all the other faces of the cube, you get the octahedron, and vice versa. And the same is true of the dodecahedron and the icosahedron. They are reciprocals of each other, while the tetrahedron, symbolizing fire, is the inverse or dual of itself. And there are many other mathematical and geometrical aspects such as this, which can be found detailed in many online sites and which are certainly worthwhile modes of investigation, but which we're not going to be going into detail into today. Instead, we're hoping, at least at an introductory level, to be pointing more to the symbolic and theosophical correspondences. For example, each of the polyhedra, as described in the Timaeus, corresponds to a cosmic element. The dodecahedron is said to encompass or synthesize the other 4, symbolizing the whole or the 5th element called ether, or sometimes pronounced aether, with the A being sometimes not silent. And H.P. Blavatsky explains that the ether of the ancient Greeks corresponds to the Akasha in the esoteric or in the Hindu system, which she defines as the vehicle of primordial substance and omnipresent sound, photic compassion, and divine thought, or logoic, that is, pre-cosmic and cosmic ideation, along with much else that is to be unfolded through, in part at least, through the rest of the talk. One of the most common and perhaps obvious associations of the dodecahedron is that of the zodiac. The 12 faces of the dodecahedron corresponding to the 12 gods of the Greek, Babylonian, Egyptian, and other pantheons, and the division of the solar year into 12 months, also linked to the 24-hour clock. And while modern astronomy traces the earliest known 12-fold division of the celestial belt to the 5th or 6th century BCE Babylonia, HPB states that the divine knowledge associated with the zodiac, like that of geometry, predates the dawning of the human mind. She says it was passed to the forefathers of the Aryan Brahmins by the spiritual ancestors of our modern adepts and Mahatmas more than 18 million years ago. Through these sons of God, she says, born of Kriya Shakti, infant humanity got its first notions of all the arts and sciences, as well as of spiritual knowledge. And it is they who laid the first foundation stone of our most ancient civilizations. This host of avatars and bodhisattvas, perfected in previous cycles of evolution, are spoken of as the fifth hierarchy, symbolized by the five-pointed star, and also represented by Prometheus in the Greek system, corresponding to the Kumaras, the mind-born sons of Brahma in Hindu mythology. The word Kumara, HPV points out, is an anagram for Makara, the mythical sea dragon of wisdom associated with Capricorn, which is, of course, the 10th sign of the zodiac. The word Makara also refers to the two hands, each of five fingers, and also pointing to this idea that the five-pointed star is linked with the principle of human manas, that is, the human soul, of self-conscious intelligence, choice, and responsibility, which, as a ray of the divine mind, is capable of awakening to omniscient knowledge in universal justice or compassion. Of all the primary geometric shapes associated with the Platonic solids, the pentagram is the only one with angles greater than 90 degrees. And Helen points this out as being representative of that capacity to open one's arms to include all other beings. H.P. Blavatsky points out that Makara is also found as an emblem on the banner of Kamadeva, linking the force of universal eros, kindness and empathy for all, also associated with Fohat, with Mahat, that is divine ideation, which ushers the universe itself into being from non-being. The harmonic series created by the geometry of the five-pointed star or pentagram has an ancient pedigree, shown to have been used extensively in Greek arts of all kinds. In the Renaissance, it came to be called the divine proportion by the mathematician Luca Pacioli, and was illustrated via Leonardo's drawing of the Vitruvian Man as being evident, a proportional series that's evident throughout the human form. And this proportional series has been of immense interest to a long line of scientists, mathematicians, geometricians, artists, and architects, and is found in animal and plant forms as well. It is the same proportional relationship which undergirds the Fibonacci series and the logarithmic spiral, as famously found in the nautilus shell and the ammonite. And we find it again, of course, in the pattern of scales on the rind of a pineapple, in the distribution of seed points on a pine cone, and on the face of a sunflower, in spiral galaxies, and in hurricane wind patterns. No doubt harboring many other meanings unguessed at, the five-pointed star was also the symbol of the Pythagorean Academy. In confirming the centrality of geometry to our understanding of the astronomical visible cosmos, the 16th century father of classical physics and observational astronomy, Galileo, stated the following: "The universe cannot be read until we have learnt the language and become familiar with the characters in which it is written. It is written in mathematical language, and the letters are triangles, circles, and other geometrical figures, without which means it is humanly impossible to comprehend a single word." Geometry is foundational to all of current humanity's most sophisticated and advanced technologies. from the Hadron Collider to the James Webb Telescope. In 2013, revolutionary new forms of mathematics on the very cutting edge of particle physics associated with the collider discovered what they call positive geometries outside of the space-time continuum. They're referred to as amplitude-hedrons, which reduce thousands of algebraic equations necessary to explain particle collision outcomes into simple formulas. And there's many remarkable videos of this online. If you Google Donald Hoffman and his recent papers, he and other theoretical physicists are attempting to show how such geometries may be one step towards apprehending a new mathematical science which postulates the primacy of consciousness, out of which the foundations of both classical and quantum physics emerges. Beyond the infinite utility of applied geometry to architecture, design, and the material sciences of every sort, in the late 19th century, H.P. Blavatsky affirmed the Pythagorean view that geometry is indeed a divine science. She called it the fifth key in a series of 7 keys to universal esoteric language and symbology, a language so profoundly suited to expressing the mysteries of nature that from the very beginning of human life in our round and globe, she wrote, the perfected heavenly men of our race used the language of geometry to pass divine knowledge to their pupils, from one generation of wise men to the next. Such is the mysterious power of geometrical and numeric symbolism, she says, that a few pages of geometrical signs and glyphs record the entire secret doctrine, the accumulated wisdom of the ages, whose cosmogony alone is the most stupendous and elaborate of all known systems, and which has occupied countless generations of initiated seers and prophets to set down and explain. HPB taught that the circle was the starting point of every ancient cosmogony, a symbol of boundless space, abstract motion, and eternal duration, which she called the incognizable deity. And in the proem, she offers the image of a white circle on a dull black background, whereas in the transactions of the Blavatsky Lodge, she offers a black circle on a dull gray background as a starting image. Whether black, gray, or white, we are implored to imagine the circle or sphere without bounds, extending the imagination beyond its conceptual limits. How does one conceive of a circle whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere to be found? And she later follows with this seminal meditation. Close your eyes, and from your own consciousness of perception, try and think outward to the extremist limits in every direction. You'll find that equal lines or rays of perception extend out evenly in all directions, so that the utmost effort of perception will terminate in the vault of a sphere. The limitation of this sphere will, of necessity, be a great circle, and the direct rays of thought in any and every direction must be right line radii of the circle. This, then, must be, humanly speaking, the extremist, all-embracing conception of the Ein Sof manifest, which formulates itself as a geometrical figure, namely of a circle, with its elements of curved circumference and right line diameter divided into radii. Hence, a geometrical shape is the first recognizable means of connection between the Ein Sof and the intelligence of man. nameless, it has been given many names. In Genesis, it is referred to as the darkness on the face of the deep. The Sufi mystics called it al-Haq, the real. In Advaita Vedanta, it is the non-dual reality called Parabrahm or Paravak. Para in Sanskrit means beyond or higher, and Vak means speech or voice. Like Parabrahm, Paravak refers to that primordial resonance which is beyond the emanating voice of the creative deity. Beyond, in fact, we're told, an endless series of periodical universes. It is referred to in the voice of the silence on the opening page as nada, both a Sanskrit and Senzar term meaning the soundless, unending sound. And in the Gupta Vidya, it is linked with the OM of the Gayatri mantra. Celebration of the OM is the central thread of the spiritual path and of the quintessential Hermetic current. Celebration of hymns of praise to the Om is the axis around which the entire work of the great Lodge of Mahatmas turns. And it is a celebration on behalf of and among intrepid individuals who are willing to become men and women of meditation, consciously very aware of what the highest level of Om represents. The essence of both wisdom and compassion, we're told. To the seer and adept, this self-existence is non-dual, absolute consciousness, an infinitude of absolute light, also called Sat Chit Ananda in the Upanishads, truth, consciousness, bliss. It is the indivisible, all-pervading fire sought by the yogi in deepest samadhi. It is also entered, we're told, by every human being in deep dreamless sleep, revitalizing and regenerating each soul, preparing it for another day. In the classical Greek conception, what later became translated by the word reason was originally connected with logos, meaning not only word or speech, but also logic and demiurgos, the causal and creative origin of the cosmos, which renders divine thought manifest. And although H.P. Blavatsky summarizes the process of cosmic unfoldment in terms of three primary stages, the first, second, and third logos, if we examine them closely, we begin to see both a tenfold and a 12-fold logic appearing again and again, actually, as suggested by the Pythagorean triangle, the decad, and the dodecahedron. In the secret doctrine, the Pythagorean monos is linked with the first unmanifested logos, called the germ that dwelleth in darkness, the first cause, as distinguished from the causeless cause, a crucial distinction in esoteric philosophy. It is the infinitely non-dimensional pinnacle of the Pythagorean triangle, within which all other points will arise and to which they will return. And in Transactions, HPB describes it as a potential white point in the black circle. And Raghavan Iyer wrote of its initiatory function as triune, as precosmic ideation, precosmic substance, and potential precosmic force, a 3-in-1 in a state of pristine primordial unity. The first logos is also correlated by HPB with Vajradhara of Northern Buddhism, the synthesis of the wisdom and compassion transcending even the dhyanis, called Adi Buddha, the Supreme Buddha, who, as the Lord of all mysteries, cannot manifest, but sends into the world of manifestation his heart, the diamond heart. Adi Buddha is also the term used to describe the essence of the Kalachakra mandala, as first given in the West by the Dalai Lama in 1981 on behalf of world peace. And students of the secret doctrine have found that many key elements that are given in the Kala Chakra also appear in Blavatsky's teaching and were elaborated in the 1975 cycle as well, pointing to that esoteric tradition of Theosophia which precedes the historical Buddha. And in her article on the mystery of the Buddha, she calls it, this first logos, the primordial seed of all seeds, the Mahabija or Mahavishnu, from which all the world's saviors, avatars, and bodhisattvas have grown out. The horizontal diameter line that seemingly divides the monad into two is also rich in symbolic meaning in esoteric philosophy. H3B describes it as simultaneous with the first logos. It is a line without breadth or thickness, the symbol of primordial, indestructible matter, the geometric correlate of, quote, divine, immaculate Mother Nature within the all-embracing infinitude. Called Mula Prakriti in Sanskrit, it is the homogeneous, unmanifested essence of all levels of substance and form. Every circle has an infinite number of diameter lines. And if the dividing line is vertical, we have a 1 and a 0, or 10, the number of fulfillment, completion, and totality, as we see in the 10 dots of the Pythagorean Decad and the 10 Sephiroth of the Kabbalah. That is, the end is in the beginning. And HVB points to this initial 1 and 0 as representing Adam Kadmon, the tenfold primordial man, or Purusha. She calls it the culmination of divine incarnations on earth, from which the whole universe proceeds, and to which, she says, every atom in visible and invisible space is evolving around and towards it. So it represents that potentiality which is in all at one level. The second logos is the manifested, where the pre-cosmic becomes cosmic. The vertical line of pure spirit becomes cosmic ideation, uniting at the nexus with the horizontal line of cosmic substance or prakriti. And this is representative of that sacrificial descent of spirit into matter, not a stage distant in time, but an ever-present reality. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, the whole of nature is part of one universal sacrifice called Adi Yajna. And this is why any action performed except in the spirit finds the actor. And this quote is very challenging and illuminating. The first and earliest cross and circle, into the formation of which enters the deity, symbolized by Vishnu, the eternal circle of boundless time, Kala, on whose plane lie crossways all the gods, creatures, and creations born in space and time. In the secret doctrine, the second logos is also linked with Vajrasattva, born of fire and water, holder of the Vajra, the indestructible perfection of discriminative wisdom and skillful means. So it's both jhana and dhyan, and upaya, that is. Upaya is skillful means in Northern Buddhism. The capacity to dispense the nurturing rain of Dharma upon all beings. She says in the voice that it is the full Mahatma, merged with the Absolute. Geometrically, both the horizontal and the vertical are needed in order to construct the upright equilateral triangle, the 3 in 1. For the Pythagoreans, the triangle was the first true number and the first perfect space-enclosing geometrical figure associated with logos. It signified right proportion, harmony, the resolution of dualities, knowledge, piety, and friendship. And in the oldest Grecian cosmology, the third principle, binding matter and spirit, was Eros. Eros is, of course, not the winged Cupid, HPB points out, but divine universal love or absolute compassion. And it corresponds to the Mahakaruna Buddhism, the Hindu Kamadeva, and the Tibetan Fohat. Each of these having a deep and rich metaphysical meaning related to the law of laws, compassion absolute, spoken of in the voice. It is that active sacrificial energy which makes of all seeming differentiation a living unity, which binds all life into one life. Among the many levels of meaning of Fohat given in the SD is that of cosmic electricity, the bridge by which the ideas existing in divine thought are impressed on cosmic substance as the laws of nature, also referred to as the dynamic energy of cosmic ideation, the guiding power of all manifestation, and the thought divine transmitted and made manifest through the Dhyan Chohans. In the secret doctrine, this formless three-in-one marks the dawn of the cosmic mind called Mahat, said to be the combined luminous wisdom of countless suns, countless previous manvantaras, the seed harvested from an infinite series of previous cycles, which holds in potentia all that will emerge in the current cosmic unfoldment. And in the theosophical conception, it is connected with the mysteries of the higher immortal triad of every human being, called Atma Buddhi Manas. Manas, as we know, is that principle of self-conscious awareness which makes of buddhi an active rather than a passive principle. It is that potentiality of the light of the logos, capable of conscious descent into and through the darkest realms, so to speak, of materiality. And we're also given the Kabbalistic axiom that the deity is one because it is infinite, but it is triple because it is ever manifesting. By mystic transmutation, wrote HPB, this three-in-one essence becomes the tetractys, the four. The tetractys, as we read in the Golden Verses, was that immortal witness by which the Pythagoreans swore their most sacred oaths. And this aspect of this principle could be seen as corresponding to pranidhana, which is the great bodhisattva vow found in the higher tetrad of paramitas in the Buddhist system of 10 paramitas. It conceptually and geometrically, there are a number of ways of visualizing this passage from 3 to 4 of triangle to tetrad. Typically, the fourth point is understood as projecting itself outside the triangle at right angles to the center point and the plane of the originating triangle, and equidistant from each of the 3 points already established. The 3 chords projecting from the existing vertices to the new vertex are equal to the length of each side of the originating triangle. And so the triangle becomes the tetrahedron, the simplest possible and most structurally stable space enclosing three-dimensional form. And by this transmutation, one equilateral triangle becomes 4 equilateral triangles. And in addition, the 6 edges of the tetrahedron plus the center point equals 7, which is one way of thinking about this hebdomadic, this sevenfold part of the music of the spheres. All of these stages also correlating with various levels of Vok, which we're not really going into detail today, but it's one thing to keep in mind because it helps to disperse any kind of fixed idea that we may have in relation to the geometry. Mirroring itself, as above, so below, the tetrahedron becomes the Merkaba, whose vertices delineate the eight corners of a cube. This tetrahedral lattice, by the way, is that of the purest diamonds, which is, as we know, the hardest substance known to human beings. Diamonds provide one of the most vivid confirmations of the Pythagorean teaching that perfectly harmonious, formless spiritual intelligences descending through hierarchies and impressing substance on every plane manifest in archetypal geometries in this way. And diamonds are a potent metaphor for the fully awakened bodhisattva, known as Dorje Sempa, which literally means the diamond holder or diamond souled. The Dorje cuts through, we're told, all the veils of nature, all seeming opposites, including that of nirvana and samsara, ultimately, and manifests through a sevenfold stream of radiant knowledge solely for the benefit of suffering sentient beings. In the pentagonal, interlaced 72-degree rotation of that originating tetrahedron, the vertices of 5 interlaced tetrahedrons denote or specify the 20 vertices of the dodecahedron. So we see how those two shapes are connected. And we also, all of this is pointing to this fundamental, mystical conception that in studying the profound associations of geometric logoic unfoldment, we're not only radically rethinking the origins of consciousness and of life, the mystery of creative emanation, or is referred to as Kriya Shakti, and the activation of divine universal will through divine eros and so on, which are all aspects of our true nature of the true self, and represent core aspects of what we would call the metapsychology of Theosophia, and its omnidirectional ethics. In addition to all that, we're also attempting to gain some philosophical grasp of the prototypical fields of universal quiescent awareness and compassion that enlightened beings continuously inhabit, and the root, sacrificial, and creative function that they continually perform throughout the cosmos and on the hidden planes of nature. Stepping back to an alternative sequence of unfoldment, just briefly, as mentioned, the tetrahedron is the only one of the 5 Platonic solids that is self-reciprocating. And we have this quote, I think it's from stanza 3, that the radiant essence becomes 7 inside, 7 outside. So it's like this self-reflection or self-mirroring, and that also that the 6 edges of the tetrahedron correspond to the diagonals of each face of the 6-sided cube or hexahedron, which is another geometrical symbol of the 7, and a tremendous multidimensional significance. The cube is the sacrificial cross, a symbol of the divine unfolding itself into the sevenfold cross of matter, and of the initiate who crucifies the senses on behalf of the one life. From the SD Volume 2, the phenomenal world receives its culmination and the reflex of all in man. Therefore, he is the mystic square in his metaphysical aspect, the tetractys, and becomes the cube on the creative plane. His symbol is the cube unfolded, and 6 becoming 7, 3 crossways, the female, and 4 vertically, and this is man, the culmination of the deity on earth whose body is the cross of flesh, on, through, and in which he is ever crucifying and putting to death the divine Logos, or his higher self. And students of this teaching know that the seven Sephiroth of the Kabbalah, the seven primary gods of the Greek pantheon, correlate with the seven Dhyani Buddhas of this trans-Himalayan teaching, and that they are given as the seven Dhyanis as the root spiritual essences and agents of the divine mind, the seven-stringed lyre or lyre of Apollo, which further unfolds everything in the manifested universe according to karmic and cosmic law. They are the pinnacle of vast hierarchies of beings who progressively differentiate into the hidden architecture of nature, the great chain of being, the seven cosmic elements, the seven kingdoms, and the seven principles of human nature. That is, all beings, matter, consciousness, and energy in every system. Without the seven dhyanis, wrote HPB, neither the cosmos nor human nature can be understood. And this is particularly relevant to us in our time. For all human beings, in the present period of evolution, spiritual growth consists in awakening noetic awareness of formless spiritual essences, a process of monastic maturation which requires precise apprehension of the different sets of dhyanis and ancestors involved in the complex karmic heredity of humanity. And this sevenfold host is also the archetypal essence of all cyclic time. They correspond to the 7 days of creation found in the Hebrew Bible and in Hinduism, the 7 globes, rounds, and races of theosophical teaching, as well as the 7 days of the week and the 4 times 7 days of the lunar cycle. When the divine eye is awakened, we're told, all cyclic activity is seen to be governed by the same celestial pattern linked to the dhyanis. Geometrically, the 3-dimensional unfoldment can be continued. A Kabbalistic axiom states, the Dodecahedron, the whole of 12 faces, lies concealed within the perfect cube. And when the dodecahedron is constructed using the 12 edges of the cube, the sides of the dodecahedron are in golden ratio to the sides of the cube. If one of the meanings of the sevenfold cube is that of the archetype of cyclic time and unfoldment of principles, how does that relate, we might ask, to the 12-fold division of the zodiac, which is also described as a scalable archetype of all cyclic time. In other words, applicable to not just the yearly cycle, but a cycle of precession, a cycle of manifestation for a planetary system, for the Manvantara, the 12 great orders. And in Isis Unveiled, HPB gives what appears to be a hand-drawn diagram showing the order and arrangement of signs in the zodiac, and describes that the overall scope of the zodiac as following the same archetypal pattern of involution and evolution that is found in the sevenfold cycle of rounds and races as given in the SD. And if we overlay the zodiacal wheel in the order that's given in Isis with this spiraling cycle of root races that's given on page 300 of book 2 of the SD, we begin to see the logic. And we'll just point to a few key points that make this correlation pretty clear, we'd say. Aries, for example, as a fire sign at the inception point, is connected with the creative or emanating fire and light of the Logos, which heralds each new dawn. It's also linked to the planet Mars as a sign of initiation and phlotic rebirth and generation. Skipping down to Virgo, HPB explains in the SD that the 3 Virgos shown in different locations on the Dendera zodiac offer an astronomical record of the first 3 divine dynasties who taught the third root race, all the arts and sciences, as we've mentioned. Whereas Libra at the bottom, symbolized by the scales, marks that turning point between descent and ascent, an equilibrium between spirit and matter. And it is, of course, that crucial turning point where the individuated human manas, capable of linking heaven and earth, is awakened, and thus embarking on this upward arc of self-conscious evolution through the cycle of reincarnations. Whereas Scorpio, in one of its meanings, wrote HPB, represents the fall into sin and matter, the separation of androgyne humanity into male and female, and the misuse of the desire principle associated with the fourth root race Atlanteans. And if we carry the correspondence further, we notice that we are apparently also in a much larger Aquarian cycle than we may have guessed. This larger epoch encompasses the second, roughly speaking, the second subrace of the fifth root race to at least the first subrace of the sixth root race. And with each subrace lasting roughly 210,000 years, which is the number she gives in the SD, this would make it appear that we're in the midst of a much larger Aquarian cycle extending roughly 1 million years into the future. And in the Key to Theosophy and a series of articles written at the end of her life on the cusp of the precessional Aquarian age, H.P. Blavatsky offered a compelling vision that in the face of the most barbaric, immoral, and criminal currents of modern materialistic civilization, that a mystic tide, are her words, a mystic tide of truth and love, those are my words, was being offered by the true geniuses and pathfinders of the human race, by masters of wisdom. The outcome, or outlines rather, of the metaphysics of the compassionate cosmos and the ethics of universal brotherhood was being made available to humanity on behalf of all, and in the light of the sixth subrace of the fifth root race, which was and is forming on the American continent. HPB describes the sixth and seventh subraces of the fifth would lead to the sixth root race, which would rise on a new continent that is now forming in what we call the Pacific Ocean. Seemingly distant for most human beings, for the adepts, this is tomorrow. Joining with parts of the existing west coast of the Americas, the sixth root race would indeed be Pacific, a word meaning peacemaking. As she says, there would be no more wars. H.P. Blavatsky, the masters in their letters, W.Q. Judge, and Crosby all restated this same prophecy, that the Theosophical movement involved torchbearers of truth who appear in the last 25 years of each century, revealing these long lost treasures only known in the mystery schools of antiquity, and that this is indeed a movement initiated by the Brotherhood of Bodhisattvas, who watched over humanity from the beginning of our planetary system to set the foundations of future civilizations, to keep alive humanity's intuitions, and to gestate the embryo of a mini golden age in the midst of Kali Yuga. And this is the crucial part of the glad tidings Theosophy as divine wisdom offers us, encouraging us to call forth our utmost altruism, our patient but energetic efforts, tolerance, and good cheer, so that as many souls as possible may participate in this upward arc. And that concludes my presentation. So we have time for questions, discussion.
Well, what a presentation. That was so powerful, Kurt. I am just stunned, not just at the beautiful graphic work here, but just how in depth you took us into geometry and cosmogenesis, and really giving a beautiful respect and love for number and geometry, and because they are forces and they are living and they are in us and through us and around us. You did go a little bit into Helen Valberg's article, and I looked at that article, and I would really love to. There's like a poem at the very end of the article. I don't know if you read it. I would like to read it, if you don't mind.
Sure. Of course.
And I'm not sure. I'm assuming that she wrote it because there's no name under it, and she's pretty good at citing people.
Yeah.
The cosmic dance is fiery, yet it moves within a sphere, pulsating with the drum of time around the center there. The radiant flames encircle the moon on Shiva's brow, and the mixtured glow intones the sacrificial vow. I, Shiv, bring forth my sons, a youthful virgin race, that all creatures yet to be may come to see their face. I was thinking of the face of your geometry here. And so saying, the fiery Lord from point and sphere produced, the triads and the pentagons, their forms with light infused. Thus did the cosmic plan unfold in 12-fold symmetry, and thus did man obtain the form to match divinity. So, with that, we are open for questions. And thank you so much, Kirk. That was quite a gift to all of us.
Thank you for that reading, Desiree. That was a very nice capstone.
Well, you know, I think about numbers in terms of the mother-father quite a bit. And I know that in some places we consider the male the odd number and the female the even number, but it seems like there's a certain time when they reverse roles, because I've seen it in the where we're talking about the mother father in the proem. I think she has the male as the number, the even number, and the female as the odd, and then somehow it flips. But in any case, I'm trying to think if there is a similarity in terms of mother father, and I'm talking about it just in terms of active and passive, that translates into geometric form. In other words, are there geometric forms that are feminine versus or passive versus active? I don't know, but I wonder if that translates.
Well, so like we pointed out, the fundamental symbolism of the vertical and the horizontal that she says emerges simultaneously with the first logos. That the horizontal referring to Mula Prakriti or Mother Nature, that homogeneous matter from which, and great ocean of space from which all forms will emerge in any given cycle, and which is boundless. That is, that even the great cosmic cycle breathing forth this vast a spectrum and kaleidoscope of beings and systems, that does not deplete in any way this, as you could say, the boundless fecundity and giving nature of that, fundamental, you could call it female principle, and then the vertical being connected with divine thought, which, the two are one, right? So that's part of the idea that they're emerging from a common essence, and but the vertical having to do with divine ideation, consciousness, and becoming cosmic ideation, and this active descent of spirit into matter for for the benefit and the you know the so that the process of cosmic unfoldment can take place. You know, the two having to work indissolubly together. You know, throughout the process. So
Well, as you said, they're one.
yeah,
It's it's
yeah,
expanding itself.
right, yes, yeah.
That is, but anyway, so very, very beautiful, and it's for some people there's an affinity toward number, and I think one of the reasons why, and not just number, but also geometric form, because it is there's something very intuitive about it. Um, I can read a book and not understand it, but if you give me a picture along with it, I can see, okay, now I see the correlation because there's something within the circle or the dodecahedron or just the angles. They almost seem to propagate themselves. When you see them, you can see one, and yet suddenly there's multiplicity in it. Um, it's interesting that you have a dodecahedron, but it's made up of, of what, 12 pentagrams?
Hmm.
Yeah. So the numbers and the lines and the vertices and the angles all seem to just speak to each other, and it's just a beautiful the way the active and the passive have this interactive play in our reflective life. Anyway, Jonathan's got a question or a comment. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Actually, it's me here, Ken, in
Oh,
the
hi,
hello
Ken.
there. Thank you, Kurt, for this amazing survey and deep dive into numbers and geometry and connecting it to the logo I and all these different correlations. I wanted to go back to one thing. I was a little bit mystified by the tetrahedron as you go from the three to then its fourth point.
Hmm.
And then you said that in stanza three, there's a quote of the seven within and the seven without, and that the tetrahedron is the first self-reflective space enclosing geometrical shape. And I love that phrase, the space enclosing shapes. That gives me a different kind of conceptualization of the geometry. So how is it seven in and seven without? I didn't quite see that in my mind.
Uh-huh. Well, uh, there's the seven, the way I'm counting it. So you have to kind of go back to the way that both HPB and the masters actually talk about the interlaced triangles of the Theosophical Seal, for example.
Yes.
So, you know, we look at that and we say, oh, well, it's a six-pointed star. It's interlaced triangles, two triangles that would equal six, right? Well, no, they say it's the symbol of the seven because it includes the center point.
The actual point, it gives it the 6 plus 1 is 7. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's kind of what I was working with. And with the tetrahedron, you have six chords, six lines that
Okay.
create that shape. And if you also count the center point, that gives you the seven.
And that's where the 7 comes. So it's 7 within and 7 without in
Yeah.
the third stanza. Okay.
Yes, right. And because if you then take the center point, right, of those spaces, you get another tetrahedron, but it's inverted.
Mm-hmm. I saw
Yeah.
that in the picture, and I thought, where does 7 come fold in the picture you had of the tetrahedron with an inverted tetrahedron inside of it? But now it makes sense if you count that center point
I'm
as the
counting the
7.
center point. Yeah, yeah. This is the other thing that you also find in the SD, that there's kind of a play with these geometric shapes and also with number and also word forms, like the whole idea of Kumara and Makara, you know, these kind of anagrams. And she mentions this also about 31415, how it's given in different traditions in different orders, yet always that it's still a reference to the same numeric sequence. And so I, you know, having looked at this again and again through the years, this is just kind of recently came to me, is that the tetrahedron is also, so we normally think of it as
Mm-hmm.
the four, the tetrad, right? It's obviously the four because it has 4 points, has 4 triangles.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense that it's referred to as the tetrad. But if you count the center point and you count each of the vertices, you actually have 5. So this was something else I mentioned there in passing.
Yes.
The 5 is there too, right? And this again connects up to the fifth hierarchy. So in one sense, this whole process of descent and differentiation, this is part of the mystery of the teaching, that it's being enacted by hierarchies of beings who, that is the function, the dharma that they perform is the breathing forth. They assist and participate in this logoic breathing forth of the cosmos. And the fifth hierarchy in particular, kind of being that string of thread which, reaches all the way down to the human level, right? Because they are same beings who awaken manas and humanity. So the 5 is there, the 4 is there, the 5 is there, and the 7 is there.
Yes.
And actually the 12 is there too, because you have 4 triangles, and they're each 3-sided. And this is another thing that HPV says, well, 3 times 4 is 12.
Yeah, we get to 12.
Add them together, you multiply them. So in another sense, as you examine these shapes, you start to realize, you're referencing the other hierarchies as well. It's never just an isolated meaning, and there's depth upon depth. And just one other last point is that, what she says about all these sacred symbols, is that they apply to 7 distinct sciences in esoteric philosophy, and that you can really only fully know the meaning of one of them if you know all 7. and that requires an adept.
Wow.
So we're just on the very outside edge of it, kind of just trying to make some of these connections.
Yes.
And wonder is really an act of praise and wonder. That's the way I see my presentation today. You're not getting this from someone who knows these things, but who's just kind of awe.
Here you go. Yeah, it is so awesome.
Yeah, and then the connection with living beings, So yeah.
Well, thank you, Kurt and
Here's the
Desiree.
number.
And I wanted to also kind of segue into another thought. I had these 2 thoughts of the point, that central point, which seems like it was so significant throughout your presentation in the geometry, like the circle with the center point, and then the center becomes 3. You mentioned something that I came across recently, and that's the meditation of yourself at the point of a center of a sphere. And then you have these radius lines. Would you recommend that as a meditation for us as students here in the lodge?
Absolutely. And I just one other point about that, because I've been thinking a lot about it recently, is that it's very difficult
I bet.
to try and send consciousness universally, omnidirectionally, from a single point to reach out in all directions at the same time. It's very, very difficult. But we're given a kind of a step-by-step process by the Buddha himself. This is one of the meditations that he recommended, right? That you take a quarter at a time. So, and I found this to be much easier if you think of like your spine as a straight line going up, infinitely up and infinitely down. And then that's the center point of a quadrant. And you just take one quadrant at a time. And you send your deepest compassion and wisdom. And the way the Matteo Ricard speaks of it is the kind of loving compassion and concern and care that you would feel for a baby that's in your responsibility. That you send that out. It's not just consciousness being sent out, kind of this, blank of awareness, but you send your deepest wisdom and compassion out. And you fill that whole quadrant. Spend 4 minutes on that one quadrant, and then go to the next one. and then go to the next one, and then go to the fourth one. And suddenly you'll find that you have, with practice, you get this kind of all-encompassing, all-embracing sense of the self being, all that there is and all beings. So yes, it's an archetypal, quintessential meditation for anyone who's interested.
I'm going to definitely try it, but it does sound hard. But when you were speaking just now, I imagine my spine going up like an aerial and then going in all directions. But I'm going to try. Yeah. Okay, Jonathan, you're up.
This is one of the hardest things I've done all year. We're out of time.
Oh, no. Wait, Judy has a question. Judy, I'm kind of MC here, so go ahead.
Okay, well, it's very quick. Could you say that the dodecahedron is the last of the Platonic solids before the Earth becomes circular? It builds up from a square or the other solids to the dodecahedron because it's almost a circle.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Right.
Well, it has that, as we tried to point out, it has that additional feature of it being formed of pentagrams, right? And the pentagram being associated with
Yeah.
the fifth hierarchy of
Yeah.
beings enlightened in previous cycles of evolution, who are watching over and guiding, whose knowledge is omniscient, and who are watching over and protecting all beings that are manifesting in that particular cycle. So that's the kind of, we tried to convey some of that, the beauty of that, as to me being a quintessential aspect of sacred geometry.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Wonderful.
Would you
Well,
say? Oh,
Great
Go ahead.
presentation.
would you say, Kirk, that the fact that the dodecahedron is so synthesizing, but that the principle of sacrifice for the whole is a core feature of the dodecahedron? Of it's made out of pentagrams.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And yeah, the 12 also, being the 12 great orders, which we didn't talk about the nidanas except in just mentioning them, but the whole cycle of transformation of consciousness,
Yeah.
both being trapped in the cycle of evolution and its release. So the nidanas refer to both, and HPB makes this statement about the nidanas too. Whatever we may think we know about it, that it is of the deepest, concerns the deepest mysteries, and which are only revealed in initiation. So again, we're just kind of skimming over the top, but hopefully some bit of the depth gets translated there.
Well, Desiree, I'll let you wrap it up about this.
We didn't get to the prime numbers, but okay. Thanks so much again, Kurt. Oh man, that was powerful. And I know it's getting late, so I'm going to wish everyone a wonderful evening, and thank you for being with us. And we hope that you will be here with us next week.
Yes, involution and evolution. Very
Thank
appropriate
you.
following this topic.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you all. That was wonderful.
Magnificent. Thank you. Thanks, Desiree.
Sure thing.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kirk.
All righty. Good night, all.
Night. Good night. Like on the Waltons.
Thanks.
Good night.